once Donald Trump started to use this rhetoric again, and nobody, because he's Trump, and if you challenge him, he's gonna exile you. And so it's like everybody wants to kind of play up to him. And so now, Trump just came out and said that if he loses this race, it's going to be the fault of Jewish Americans. He said this on video that like, hey, if I lose this, it's going to be because Jewish American people didn't vote for me. And so again, now
it really doesn't get any more anti-Semitic than that.
I mean that again, like here is somebody it's putting a target. I'm gonna send you this clip, bro. It's like putting a target.
You're preemptively calling for violence against an entire group of people.
100%. And mind you, this is somebody who just basically said, first he says, it's the all these, immigrants from Mexico, we're going to deport them, right? With no plan. Who's going to do it? Is it going to be the army? Is it going to be the police? How much are they going to charge? What's going to happen? What's going on? No real plan, but that's what they're saying. We're going to, soon at day one, when he's a dictator on day one, we're going to deport all of these. Then now it's attacking Haitian immigrants. The vitriol against Arabs is, like you said, has been there a while. Now that's ramping up now.
Yeah.
And now, can you just play what he said?
I wasn't treated properly by the voters who happen to be Jewish. I don't know. Do they know what the hell is happening? If I don't win this election, and the Jewish people would really have a lot to do with that if that happens, because at 40%, that means 60% of the people are voting for the enemy.
The enemy. He said this at the Israeli-American Council.
Yeah, he said this at AIPAC. And so now we know your followers are violent. Yeah. We're seeing people descend into Springfield, Ohio to make violence against these. We've seen, like you said, we've seen attacks on Arab Americans, right? We've seen attacks on Mexican Americans. We've seen like pure violence by white supremacists, right? This idea that like they're not going to take our country. Now it's like, okay, if we lose, it's all of these immigrants' fault. Because remember, the narrative is they're flooding the border with immigrants so they can vote for Kamala Harris. That's the narrative.
You know what this reminds me of, and you're probably way too young to remember the climate, but I know Miracle and Jasiri do, how the world felt after 9/11.
Definitely.
This is like a facsimile of what it was like to navigate the states after 9/11. The anti-Arab statements, the people confusing Arabs and Israelis, right? Jews and Muslims.
Yeah.
The vitriol and like the oppression against brown people, and even black Muslims. Black Muslims didn't really get it as bad though, because like it was like everybody was afraid of the nation.
Yeah, because we're blacks though.
There was still surveillance.
We were still definitely. Yeah, the message was definitely surveilled, but this is still that. But my point was, this is a very familiar feeling.
Yeah. I also will add that white supremacy, in order for it to continue, needs people to uphold it.
Yes.
And so when Trump sits there and says, if I lose this race, it's the Jewish people's fault, there are a subset of people who are going to sit there and say, I do not want to deal with Republicans, armed fascists with guns, blaming me for the election, so I'm going to firmly root myself in Trump's camp so he gets elected, so I don't have to deal with the backlash.
Yeah, that's a strong point.
There's that. Then there's going to be people who are going to be
that's their form of harm reduction.
Right. There are also going to be people who are going to be like, don't talk about my community like that way, and I'm going to do something else. But when we're talking about all of these systems of violence and how they occur and how they keep forming and stay alive, it is because we are seeing in real time white supremacy can spit out and it can protect. So we look at a Mark Robinson who can be like, I can be a racist and I can be a bigot and I can do all this stuff and I can still win, or I can vote my conscience and be a Jamal Bowman and I can just be a one-term person. Yeah. I can be my conscience and be like a person and I can be fired from my job, or I can play it safe and possibly become the president of the United States. And I think we have to have real conversations about like how white supremacy threatens some of us to get in line and do its bidding while also making other people radicalize and sit there and say we have to get these systems destroyed because go ahead. Because I firmly believe that like we in the world have everything we need to survive and be okay and to live. And the reason that terrorism and violence happens is because there are forces that weaponize us against each other.
You just said a great word, and I think and it's so important because this is no different than any rhetoric that would come from a tyrannical dictator that Trump is spewing out. Like if you look across the board, whether you want to look at Taliban, whether you want to look at Stalin, whether you look at, and like, Putin, this iron fist dictatorship criminalizing an entire group of people, making these broad spectrum comments that incite violence against people preemptively and retroactively in the wake that something goes unfavorably against your political campaign is something that's been televised on CNN, on Fox, on MSNBC. You see this all the time, and Americans shake their head and their fingers at their TV stations and say, not in America. That doesn't exist here. That has no place here. And then you have someone in the fucking race right now calling for violence against your neighbor, against your friends, against your coworkers, literally calling people animals that you buy food from, that you patronize, that you share fellowship with and community with every day of your lives. And you sit back and you're okay with this. And then if this man gets elected into office, their blood is on your hands, because this is the shit that makes people afraid to come out of the houses, that makes people feel unsafe in America. And you cannot sit here and say this is an immigration crisis, because as Miracle constantly says, when you disrupt and you destabilize these other people's countries and you parade the greatness of America on their TV screens and on brochures and on Instagram and every social media platform and all these different modalities, you cannot be upset when they come here seeking refuge and asylum, praying for the same semblance of sanctity and things that are upheld by this Constitution, yet you have somebody running for the office that's antithesis of all of that, while calling for violence for people that look like me and everybody at this fucking table.
And someone who wouldn't even be able to be running for office if his grandparents and parents didn't immigrate.
Come on, man.
He's married to an immigrant too.
That part, man.
Like,
Melania is an immigrant.
Yeah, facts.
So it is, and then also too, like he represents this class of people that are able to keep their status as wealthy people. Why? Because of what Miracle talked about earlier, because you're using this migrant labor because you can pay them less, they'll work longer hours, people don't really care about them. Even sometimes they can't really even complain because sometimes there's language barriers, even in the complaining,
that
right?
Part, man.
Here's a piece, right? It said, JD Vance said,
that's the biggest, the language barrier part. Come on, man.
It's JD Vance said, murders are up 81% because of what Kamala Harris has allowed to happen in Springfield. Daniel Driscoll, Republican prosecutor in Springfield, quote, during the time that I've been in office, 21 years now, we have not had any murders involving the Haitian community. They're there to work a job, and they're there because these businesses want to bring them in so they can maximize their profit. And I just do want to touch on what you said, Miracle, because I think what you said is very, like, this is why one of the people, when we say like, and we're an organization that, talks about voter education and wanting to get people involved in voting, but sometimes the reason people don't want to be involved in the political process is exactly what Miracle said, because it's a cost. This country it's a cost of speaking truth to power.